Unfortunately, its true purpose is something much more entertainers and celebrities, by virtually every metric imaginable, monkeys, this planet is in very good health. President Trump is not exactly a nice person at times, and has said and done some things wrong. However, we were never trying to elect a priest. We were trying to elect a president. Besides, Democrats nearly elected the she-witch Clinton or Comrade Sanders. Now they are stuck with dementia-wrangled Biden. He should be more like Christ, such as when Jesus called Caesar a fox, or when John the Baptist called the Pharisees a brood of vipers. Or perhaps when Elijah let out a slew of insults towards the prophets of Baal. But I digress. Trump has done many amazing things, but the fake news would refuse to cover any of them, because heaven forbid they give him credit for anything. President Trump reached a deal with the producers of insulin to lower the out-of-pocket expense. I have an elderly aunt that depends on this, and she has told me many times that this is hurting her. He has called churches essential and has ordered that they be opened up, even though Democrats are trying to keep them closed at every turn. He declared Antifa, the same organization that burns down buildings and blocks ambulances from getting there, a terrorist group. Granted, the fake news also calls these people peaceful. Then again, they also think Bruce Jenner is a woman, so what do they know? As you may recall, many very dangerous criminals were released as a result of the China virus. Some were even sex offenders, and many were promptly rearrested. Now we have people looting and burning down cities left and right. They are doing this to protest the death by a cop that everyone in the country condemned. Now they are making this all about themselves and destroying everything in the process. So politicians release dangerous criminals into society, and now just a short while later we get this.
Many of these protests have been largely peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Oh boy, oh boy.
I'm looking at those live pictures next to you, and they seem very peaceful.
There are always folks on the fringes of protests that do the things that we don't like.
A few people who break a few windows and burn a few cars.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker. Something's on fire.
No one should be destructing property and that sort of thing, but I understand the anger.
What to do with all of these criminals being arrested? If you are a member of Biden's campaign team, your first instinct is obviously to raise money to bail these people out of jail. Countless Hollywood elites are raising and donating huge sums of money to release these terrorists on bail. So first they release the criminals, and then they try to keep them out of jail. These are the same protesters that hate and want to destroy rich people. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Each dot on this map represents a place where there is a protest taking place. Mostly it is in big cities because that is where the rioters can get the most free stuff. At many of these locations there are large piles of bricks. Not necessarily even at construction sites. The looters have been taking advantage of these to cause even more damage. Are these protests being planned out by a massive underground? I do not know. However, Bill Barr believes that they are planned. He has vowed that all of these terrorists would be indicted to the fullest extent of the law. There have been many images floating around Facebook lately that are supposedly flyers for the rioters that end with the ominous message, "Do not share." Doing so would create a trail back to the original poster. Granted, I cannot independently confirm whether these are real or photoshopped, but I would not put it outside the realm of possibility. There is no evidence whatsoever to even come remotely close to the conclusion that cops see black people as targets to systematically kill. Lest you doubt me, the overall number of people who are killed by cops went down significantly from 2015 to 2018. Starting in 2016, more whites were killed than any other group. Now, when you take into consideration how much of the population is represented by each ethnicity, proportionally, whites are killed infinitely more often than Hispanics or blacks. There are even reports that some white officers are refusing to patrol in black neighborhoods because they do not want to kill a criminal and then have their faces in every living room in America. Furthermore, in the middle of all of this, a black cop choked a black man to death, but the media was mostly silent. Last year, a white woman was killed by a black cop, but there was no outrage. The rioters nearly burned down a church, and Trump decided to stand in front of it with a Bible in hand. This is what the bishop had to say.
Let me be clear. The president just used a Bible, the most sacred text of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and one of the churches of my diocese, without permission, as a backdrop for a message antithetical to the teachings of Jesus and everything that our churches stand for. And to do so, as you just said, he sanctioned the use of tear gas by police officers in riot gear to clear the churchyard. I am outraged.
In actuality, there was no tear gas used at all. This was just the fake news lying because they still believe that Trump is the Antichrist. In truth, the police used smoke bombs and not tear gas. Granted, I would not have a problem with using tear gas on violent rioters, but I digress. President Trump also visited the St. John Paul II Shrine in Washington, D.C., before he signed an executive order for religious liberty. The Archbishop of Washington, D.C. attacked him as well. Apparently, he did not have a problem with a baby murderer like Pelosi being there and receiving Holy Communion. No, it is a president that has done more to undo the damage to religious liberties brought on by the previous administration that is the problem. The rioters are also content with blaming one of the last pieces of real journalism for doing what they themselves are doing. The rioters burned all of a homeless man's possessions, including his mattress, and InfoWars accurately covered this horror. Therefore, the rioters decided to blame Alex Jones for doing this just for show. Apparently, the rioters would never do this. Again, I show you this.
Many of these protests have been largely peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I'm looking at those live pictures next to you, and they seem very peaceful.
There are always folks on the fringes of protest that do the things that we don't like.
A few people who break a few windows and burn a few cars.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker. Something's on fire.
No one should be destructing property and that sort of thing, but I understand the anger.
Any time that there is a major crisis, try to figure out what is being covered up. In the case of these riots, it is witnesses coming forward in regards to Obamagate and how his administration utilized the FBI, which utilized the Steele dossier, which was created by Clinton and the DNC to spy on Trump. In summary, President Obama used his position to try and influence the results of an election. Clinton is being brought to trial specifically in regards to her email server, as well as a number of other crimes. Both of these are not receiving nearly enough attention because the news is too busy covering the riots. Whether that is a coincidence or not, I leave that up to you. While Michael Moore wants rioters to destroy the police department and Colin Kaepernick is calling for a revolution, Americans are standing together against this. It is no secret that the rioters are looting every business that they can get to. It is also no secret that many states are using the National Guard against the rioters. I would infinitely prefer the National Guard over the military. So-called rednecks and other patriots are standing together to protect stores from rioters. This is what happens when Americans stand together against terrorists. There are even reports coming in that the vast majority are coming in from out of state. That means that they are traveling to the big city just to loot and plunder. Meanwhile, less violent people are blocking the streets and thereby inhibiting emergency vehicles from responding to the fires that the rioters set. In many states, as long as you are driving at a slow enough speed to allow them to get out of the way, it is perfectly legal to hit these people with your car. This is a secret that the fake news does not want you to know. All people agree that Black Lives Matter. You will find almost no rational person that disagrees. Where you will find the disagreement is whether it is acceptable to burn down, loot, and otherwise destroy businesses. This is obviously never acceptable, but these protests almost universally turn violent. Furthermore, they believe that Black Lives Matter, except in the womb. Planned Parenthood kills more people than the KKK ever dreamed of. David Daladin has released more undercover footage of Planned Parenthood illegally selling human tissue. I guess since they killed off all of the minorities that they can, they have to make money somehow. Officially, they are merely compensated for their trouble, but we know that is a lie. Former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson posted his book on Amazon.com that talked about the problems with the official story in regards to the China virus. Naturally, Amazon shut it down. Apparently, it went against community guidelines. Berenson posted the notice to Twitter, where Elon Musk came across it. He then alerted Bezos, and shortly thereafter, the book was up and ready to read. There are a lot of jokes going around that kids studying the history of 2020 will have a lot to learn. But if we keep getting the truth out, the elites are going to look very bad, even 2 decades from now. Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion.